I never meant to open that drawer. It was one of those shallow ones in the antique writing desk Vanessa inherited from her grandmother. Brass-handled, stiff with age, always sticking just enough to be irritating. She used to keep it locked, said it jammed too easily, didn't want the kids tugging on it and snapping the frame. I never questioned it. Until that Thursday morning when the key was already in the lock. I don't know what compelled me to twist it. I'd taken the day off to recover from a head cold, the kind that fogs up your mind and slows time to a crawl. The house was quiet. Vanessa had gone to work early, and the kids were at school. I had no real reason to go into the study, but there I was, aimlessly wandering, mug of tea in hand, staring at dust motes floating in the window light like drifting ghosts. Then I noticed the key in the drawer. At first, I didn't even mean to open it. I just tapped it, half expecting it to resist the way it always did. But this time, the drawer gave with a low creak, opening a few inches. Something about the noise made my chest tighten, like I'd stumbled into a private room in someone else's house. Inside was a neat stack of stationery, bound with a faded green ribbon. Letters. Dozens of them, some still sealed in their envelopes, others loose, all written in Vanessa's precise, looping handwriting. I touched the top one, feeling the ridges of the ink with my thumb. For a moment, I stood still, caught between two instincts. The one that told me this was her private world, and the other, louder, screaming that if it was hidden, it wasn't meant for me. The louder one won. I untied the ribbon with trembling fingers. The first letter was dated 8 months ago, right around the time Vanessa started working late more often. I remember that because I joked about it, said she was finally becoming one of those corporate drones who fall asleep with their face on a spreadsheet. The letter began simply, "To Michael." Michael. I didn't know a Michael. Not one she'd ever mentioned. I kept reading. There was nothing romantic in the first few lines. She spoke about her day, traffic, a client who made her laugh. But by the middle of the page, her tone shifted, became more intimate, more reflective. She wrote about how he made her feel seen, how there was something about their talks that felt like home. My breath caught. I looked down at the stack. 37 letters, all addressed to Michael. Some dated back a full year. The most recent was from last week. Each one folded neatly, smelling faintly of lavender and ink. I sat down, trying to steady my hands as I picked up the next one. My heart pounded louder with every word. Michael, I thought about you all through the meeting today. I kept looking for excuses to check my phone, hoping maybe you'd text. It's getting harder to hide how much I need you. I stopped reading. There was a strange, buzzing silence in the room, like the house itself had inhaled and forgotten to exhale. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the bare branches lining our backyard. The treehouse I built for James leaned slightly to the left now. I'd promised to fix it this spring. I thought about the last few months, how Vanessa had become quieter, more distant, how she'd often sit outside after dinner with a glass of wine, staring at nothing, saying she was just tired, how she smiled less often, touched me less often. And now, here were the words she never meant me to see. I sat back down and opened another. Michael, I'm scared. Every time I lie beside him, I wonder if he can feel how far away I am. He's a good man. I don't want to hurt him, but I can't deny what we have. I read 5 letters in total, unable to stop. Each one painted a picture I didn't recognize, of a woman I thought I knew, but clearly never did. Her words were tender, desperate, full of longing. She wrote like a woman in love, not with her husband, but with a man I'd never heard of. A ghost. A shadow. Michael. I sat frozen for what felt like hours. The drawer was still open, the stack of letters mocking me with their quiet neatness. It wasn't just betrayal, it was the deliberate hiding of it. These weren't spur-of-the-moment texts or regrettable one-night stands. This was chronic, premeditated, ritualized affection. She had built a whole world inside those letters, and I had no place in it. That night, I didn't say a word to her. I watched her laugh at something the kids said over dinner, watched her brush her hair behind her ear the way she always did. She smiled at me, and for a second, I almost smiled back, until the image of her handwriting flashed behind my eyes like lightning. I started a plan that night. The next morning, after everyone left, I went back to the drawer. I took photos of every letter, page by page, using my phone. Then I resealed them, retied the ribbon, and locked the drawer again. I even returned the key to its little ceramic dish on the corner of her desk. She'd never know. Not yet. I spent the next week digging, searching for traces of Michael. I combed through her emails, social media, her cloud storage. She'd used her maiden name for the email address tied to her job, and I almost missed it. But then I found the archived folder, backups. Inside were screenshots of text messages, photos, an itinerary for a hotel in Nashville, a scanned concert ticket, a digital receipt for a bottle of wine, and a charcuterie board ordered to room 406. The name on the reservation, Michael Whitaker. I'd never heard of him. No mutual friends, no overlapping connections. But he existed. And more than that, he was real enough to book a room with her name listed under additional guest. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, trying to match this stranger to the woman I married. How had I missed this? How had she hidden so much for so long? The question burned more than the betrayal. I started printing the letters, one by one, quietly feeding the sheets through the office printer while she was out. I bought a red binder, the kind you'd use for a school project. I called it Truth. My plan wasn't fully formed yet. But I knew this. I wouldn't be the man who was cheated on and did nothing. I wouldn't be the one left picking up the pieces while she rewrote our story. The real story would be hers to read, word for word, every letter, every lie. But before I could decide how or when to confront her, something unexpected happened. 2 nights later, while Vanessa was asleep beside me, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, force of habit. The message preview read, "Michael, I miss you. Sunday, same place." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Because in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. The first thing I did was memorize the message. Not just what it said, but how it looked. The tone. The timestamp. The name. Michael. I didn't open the message, didn't need to. The preview told me everything. He missed her. And they had a usual place. Sunday. Same place. It meant this wasn't some fantasy pinned in ink and hidden in a drawer. It was alive. Current. A routine. I lay there beside her in the dark, listening to her breathe. Each rise and fall of her chest felt like a hammer strike in my ears. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed and went black. For a while, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed between the urge to throw the phone across the room or wake her up and ask her to tell me, force her to tell me, who Michael really was. But instead, I did what I always do when the stakes are high. I stayed quiet and observed. The next day, I took the kids to the park while Vanessa went shopping. She had her phone in her purse, but I'd already cloned it the night before, used a program I'd downloaded from a private subreddit. It mirrored all her texts, emails, and even GPS pings onto a discrete app on my own phone. I knew where she was, every moment. She wasn't at Target like she said, or the boutique she always name-dropped. She was across town, parked outside a small cafe near the art district. I knew the spot. It had an upstairs seating area with secluded booths, candlelight after dusk, a menu full of things we never ate. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I sat 2 blocks away in my car, watching the location beacon blink on my screen. She stayed there for 2 hours. I drove home without waiting to see who came out with her. I wasn't ready. Not yet. That evening, she came home with a shopping bag from the very boutique she claimed to have visited. A new scarf tucked inside. A lie, wrapped in silk. She smiled as she walked in the door, kissed me lightly on the cheek. Smelled faintly of perfume she hadn't worn in years. "How were the kids?" she asked, dropping her keys in the bowl. "Good," I said, careful not to let anything in my voice betray me. "We got ice cream." "Ah," she replied, already walking away. I watched her go, and in that moment, something inside me quietly died. Not from heartbreak, from clarity. This wasn't temporary. It wasn't confusion, or a lapse, or some mistake she regretted. This was deliberate. And that meant I needed to act with equal precision. That night, after everyone was asleep, I returned to the digital clone of her phone. I found the full conversation with Michael. They used a messaging app with disappearing messages, but Vanessa had turned off auto-delete weeks ago, probably without realizing it. A full thread unfolded before me, months long, filled with pet names, private jokes, and references I didn't understand. But I understood one thing: they were in love. And worse, she loved him the way she used to love me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I printed every message, line by line, date, time, every emoji. I tucked the pages into the red binder alongside the letters. The pile grew fatter, heavier. Tangible proof of a world I'd been excluded from. Then I found the photos. Most weren't explicit. A selfie here, a blurry shot of his hand holding hers across a restaurant table. A close-up of her wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. One, taken in a hotel mirror, showed her bare shoulder, his reflection behind her, shirtless, holding a wine glass. She had sent it. She even captioned it, "Wearing nothing but your gift. I miss you already." That necklace? She wore it 2 weeks ago at my parents' anniversary dinner. And suddenly I remembered something. My father had asked if it was new. Vanessa laughed and said I had given it to her for her birthday. Kissed my cheek while she lied. I never gave her that necklace. Michael did. The rage I felt then was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't fire, it was ice. Cold. Sharp. Calculating. She didn't just cheat. She stole moments from our life and repurposed them as cover for her affair. She wore another man's gift while sitting beside me at my family table. Smiled at me while her heart belonged to someone else. I closed the binder, held it in my lap like a weight, and thought, how do I make her feel this? How do I show her what betrayal tastes like? And then I remembered the letters. She kept them. She didn't throw them away. She didn't burn them or hide them in a password-protected file. She wrote them on paper. She tied them with a ribbon. She locked them in a drawer. It wasn't guilt that made her keep them. It was romance. She wanted to reread them. So I gave her the chance. Sunday morning, while she was out getting brunch with the girls, I placed the red binder on her pillow. No note. No dramatic presentation. Just the truth, bound and waiting for her like a gift she never expected to receive. I made sure the house was clean. The kids were at my sister's for a sleepover. I wanted no distractions. No excuses. No exits. Then I waited. At 3:14 p.m., the front door opened. I heard her heels on the hardwood. Heard the silence when she realized the house was too quiet. Heard the pause in her breath when she entered the bedroom and saw it, red against white sheets. The binder. She didn't call out my name. Instead, I heard the rustle of pages. Slow. Methodical. Reading. I sat in the living room, sipping cold coffee, listening to the pages turn like leaves in a windless forest. Then, footsteps. She stood in the doorway, the binder clutched to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were red, but not from crying. From fear. "You read them?" she asked, her voice thin. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Her hand trembled. "You went through my things." My things. The words echoed in the space between us. I stood, slowly, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. Then I walked past her, out of the room, leaving her standing there with every word she'd ever hidden from me pressed against her ribs. I didn't say a word, because she had said enough. That night, she tried to talk. I wouldn't let her. I told her I needed time, space, that I would stay in the guest room, that I would speak when I was ready. But I wasn't going to speak. I was going to plan, because now I knew the game we were playing, and I wasn't about to lose. The next morning, I messaged Michael from Vanessa's cloned app. Sunday was lovely. Let's do next week. Room 314? The reply came within seconds. Absolutely. Can't wait. He didn't even hesitate. Didn't ask if it was really her. Didn't wonder why she was messaging so soon after their last rendezvous. He trusted her. He should have known better. Because now, I was coming instead. I didn't sleep the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his name. His face. Whatever vague image my mind conjured. Morphing, warping, smiling with her smile pressed against his. My heart beat like a war drum, not from fear, but anticipation. Room 314. It was their usual place, and now it would be mine. The hotel was one of those boutique ones, stylish enough to feel high-end, anonymous enough to hide anything. I booked room 314 under a fake name, Anthony Weller, and paid in cash at the desk. The clerk didn't blink. This place was used to secrets. Inside, the room was dim, tasteful. A small velvet couch beneath a window. A king-size bed dressed in cream and gold. A single framed photo of a forest path hanging over the headboard. All of it too perfect. Too rehearsed. This was the stage where they played pretend. I checked my phone. Michael hadn't messaged again, but I knew he'd come. I'd told him, same time. And their pattern was regular. 2 p.m. every other Sunday. Vanessa had a brunch tradition, or so I'd been told for months. I arrived early. I wanted to own the space before he walked into it. I left the lights off and pulled a chair from the desk to the corner, far from the door, but with a full view. I sat there, still, quiet, letting the atmosphere sink in. This room had heard lies whispered like prayers. This room had held their laughter, their secrets, their bodies. Now it would hold something else, reality. At exactly 2:07 p.m., a soft knock tapped against the door. 3 short raps. Familiar. Confident. My chest constricted. Not from nerves, but from restraint. I didn't want to shout. I didn't want to explode. I wanted him to see me. Sit in his presence. Feel the cold recognition bloom behind his eyes. I waited a full 5 seconds, then walked to the door and opened it. He looked just like I imagined. Tall, clean-shaven, wearing an Oxford shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Dark, tousled hair. The kind of man who spent more on skincare than tools. He looked past me at first, like expecting her to appear from behind the door. Then his eyes fell on mine. And for a split second, he didn't recognize me. But I recognized everything. The scent he wore, the one that had once lingered faintly on Vanessa's scarf. The nervous tick, rubbing his thumb along his jawline, that she'd once described in one of her letters. The small tattoo on his wrist, half concealed by his sleeve. Michael. His smile faltered. I stepped aside, gesturing him in without a word. He hesitated. Vanessa? He asked, voice low, uncertain. She's not coming. I replied, tone even. He froze, confusion knotting his face. I think you and I need to have a conversation, I added. His mouth opened, then closed. Something flickered in his expression, guilt, maybe, or arrogance pretending to be confusion. Eventually, he stepped inside, letting the door close behind him with a dull click. You're her husband, he said quietly. I nodded. And you're the man writing love letters to someone else's wife. He looked down, hands in his pockets. I didn't know she hadn't told you. Save it, I cut in. Sit. I pointed at the couch. He obeyed. Not because I intimidated him, but because he didn't know what I was going to do next. That made him cautious. I took my seat across from him. The room was quiet, thick with tension. For a long while, neither of us spoke. He broke first. She told me you were distant, unavailable, emotionally checked out. I smiled, a small, humorless twitch. That's how you justify it? She gave you a tragic little story, and you believed it? He shrugged. I don't expect forgiveness, but I care about her. I leaned forward. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't have dragged her into this fantasy where neither of you has to pay the bill. You're not in love, you're in denial. His eyes narrowed. You think keeping her in a cold marriage is better? You think she was cold because she wasn't with you. Maybe she was cold because she was lying to everyone, every day. Maybe the problem isn't me. He said nothing. I stood and walked to the nightstand. I pulled open the drawer and took out the item I'd hidden earlier. The binder. I dropped it onto the bed between us with a solid thump. He stared at it. She wrote you letters, I said. 37, to be exact. I've read every one. Photographed them. Printed them. Just like the messages you sent her. The pictures. The hotel bills. The necklace. He reached toward the binder. I stopped him with a glance. No, you don't get to read them again. You already know what they say. He looked away, jaw tight. I crossed my arms. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear from her life. No goodbye. No closure. Just gone. If you contact her again, I send this binder, plus everything else, to your wife. His head snapped up. So I guessed right. He was married too. The blood drained from his face. She doesn't know? I asked casually. He shook his head, slow and stunned. Then I suggest you make a clean break. If you love Vanessa like you say you do, then let her fix what's broken without you dangling behind her like a life raft made of lies. He stood abruptly. This is messed up. Cheating always is, I said. But you don't get to complain about the consequences. You set this in motion. I'm just the hand pulling the brake. He looked at the door, then back at me. You're not going to tell her I was here? I shook my head. No, that part's yours to live with. He hesitated, then turned and walked out. No final word. No apology. Just the soft snick of the door clicking shut. I stood in the silence that followed, my ears ringing. Not from rage. From the absence of it. The room felt empty in every way now. Like the spell had broken. I sat back down, breathing slow and measured. The first part was done. Michael was out of the picture. But Vanessa wasn't. She still hadn't asked me about the binder. Still hadn't confessed. She was waiting, hoping I'd move on. Pretend I hadn't seen it. That night, she made spaghetti for dinner and kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine. The kids laughed at the table. The lights above us flickered slightly, dimmed by a storm outside. I watched her twirl pasta onto her fork. She looked up and smiled. And I smiled back. Because I'd already filed for a separate bank account. Already copied our financial records. Already contacted a lawyer. She didn't know it yet, but the next move was mine. I wasn't going to leave her. Not yet. That would be too easy. I was going to let her live with the silence of knowing that I knew. And then I'd decide what she was worth. I once believed silence was the absence of sound. Now I know it's a presence. Heavy. Choking. A weight that settles between two people like fog that never lifts. That was our house in the days after I met Michael. Quiet not from peace, but from restraint. Vanessa moved through the rooms like everything was normal. She packed the kids' lunches. She hummed while folding laundry. She left post-it notes on the fridge with "pick up milk" and "don't forget Sonia's recital." She played the role so well, I almost applauded her. Almost. But something in her had changed. She didn't check her phone as often. Didn't linger by the window at night. The energy that used to vibrate under her skin, anticipation, tension, something wild, was gone. She looked calm. But calm in the way a body does after rigor mortis sets in. I gave her nothing. No confrontation. No questions. No accusations. And that made her unravel. On the third night, she knocked gently on the guest room door. "I made tea," she said. "Chamomile. I thought maybe we could talk." I didn't answer. I watched her shadow under the door wait, then turn away. That same night, I dug out the red binder again. I hadn't opened it since the hotel. My hands hovered over it like it might burn me. But I needed to remind myself why I was doing this. I flipped to one of the early letters, her handwriting soft, flowing. "Michael, there are things I can't say aloud. Not because I'm afraid you'll judge me, but because I'm afraid you'll understand too well." That sentence. It struck me like a match in a dark room. She hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd shared herself with someone else. Parts of her she no longer offered me. Her fears. Her joy. Her doubts. She handed them to him like fragile glass, and he held them like they were his. That was worse than sex. Far worse. It was soul-deep theft. By the fifth day, she was visibly unraveling. She watched me constantly, waiting for me to speak. She flinched when I looked at her too long, and jumped at the sound of my footsteps. She was afraid, but not of violence. Of revelation. Of what I might know, or when I might strike. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Until something happened that shifted everything. That Friday, while she was at work and the kids were with my sister again, I went to the study to look for a document, a property tax form I needed for my lawyer. I opened the drawer, the one where I'd first found the letters, and paused. It was empty. Not just cleared, wiped. Not a single paper. Not a single envelope. Even the ribbon was gone. She knew. She knew I'd read them. And now she was trying to erase them, as if removing the evidence would undo the crime. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. The letters were backed up in 5 locations. Scanned. Printed. Saved under encrypted folders. There was no burying this truth. She could burn the originals for all I cared. But her desperation told me something new. She was planning something. That night, I checked her cloned phone again. No new messages from Michael. Their thread had gone dark since the hotel. But something else caught my eye. A new contact, D. Carlisle. The texts were brief. Clinical. Discussing options, confidentiality, and timeline. No romantic language. But one message stood out. "It's critical this doesn't reach him. If we proceed, I need to know we have protection in place." I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. She wasn't just covering her tracks. She was plotting a defense. Maybe legal. Maybe emotional. Maybe worse. By Sunday, I had everything prepared. The financial records were copied. The text compiled. The video clips from our home security cams cataloged. I'd spoken with 2 attorneys, one for divorce, the other for custody. And most importantly, I'd arranged a private meeting with someone I never thought I'd involve. Her father, Thomas Whitaker. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa hadn't taken Michael's name, but he shared her father's. No relation, of course. Just a coincidence. But I liked the poetry of it. Thomas had always liked me. A retired judge, sharp-eyed and observant. He saw through most people in under a minute. I figured if anyone deserved to know the truth and had the spine to confront her, it was him. I met him at his golf club, mid-morning, away from prying eyes. "Is she cheating?" he asked bluntly before I even sat down. I looked him in the eye. "Yes." He nodded once. No shock. No outrage. Just a deep sigh. I had a feeling, he said. She's been different. I handed him the binder. He opened it slowly, his face unreadable. By the third letter, he closed it. Enough, he muttered. I believe you. I don't want your help, I said. But I thought you should know. Because the next time I see her, I'm not playing quiet. He regarded me for a long time, then leaned forward. What's your endgame? That made me pause. I hadn't put it into words before, but now it crystallized, cold and clean in my chest. I want her to feel what I felt, I said. Not for a moment, but every day. I want her to sit in the wreckage and know it's hers. He nodded slowly. Then do it carefully. I left the club feeling steadier. At home, I found Vanessa in the kitchen. She was on her phone, but quickly set it down when I walked in. Hi, she said, trying to sound casual. I said nothing. She twisted her hands. Can we talk? I nodded. She gestured toward the living room, and we sat opposite each other, a small coffee table between us. She took a breath. I know you found the letters. I stayed silent. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for you to read them. I never meant for you to find out that way. You mean, you never meant for me to find out at all? I corrected. She swallowed. It wasn't like that. I was lost. I didn't think you noticed me anymore. I felt invisible. And sleeping with someone else fixed that? Her face crumpled for a second, but only for a second. I didn't do it to hurt you, she said. But you did hurt me, I said. And now you want what? Forgiveness? A second chance? Closure? Tears welled in her eyes. I just want to explain. I stood slowly. I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in consequences. Her eyes widened. What does that mean? It means I've already spoken to a lawyer. It means I know about the secret texts, the hotel, the lies. It means I've documented every instance, every timestamp, every piece of proof. She stood, panicked. You're leaving me? I leaned forward, voice cold. No, I'm not leaving. Her breath caught. I'm staying, I continued. And you're going to live every day knowing what you've done. Knowing I know. Knowing the kids don't know yet, but might. Knowing your father knows. Knowing you've lost the one person who actually stood by you when you weren't perfect. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. And maybe she didn't. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her reckoning. I turned to leave, pausing in the hallway. She called after me, voice breaking. Please, tell me what to do. I looked over my shoulder. Figure it out. You're good at that. And then I climbed the stairs, leaving her alone in the quiet. The same quiet she had built with her lies. But the story wasn't finished. Because 2 days later, I received a call from a blocked number. A voice on the other end said something I never expected. And in that moment, everything changed again. The call came at 8:42 a.m., just as I was buttoning my shirt. Blocked number. A voice I didn't recognize. Mr. Adley? The man asked. Yes, I answered, cautious. I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Darren Holt. I don't think we've met, but I believe my wife and yours have. I stopped breathing. He went on. Michael Whitaker is my brother-in-law. I saw your name on some documents that were mailed to my house by mistake. Printouts, screenshots, letters, things my wife shouldn't have had. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process his words. She'd printed them. He continued, voice tight with barely restrained fury. The letters your wife wrote to Michael. They were in a folder with his name on it, hidden in a suitcase. He must have given them to her. I didn't respond. Darren continued. I confronted her. She confessed, told me everything. And she's gone now. Packed her things. Left the kids with me. There was a long pause. I thought you deserved to know. I cleared my throat. Thank you. Then, just before he hung up, he said something that I'll never forget. She said your wife knew Michael was married. Said she didn't care. The line went dead. That afternoon, I came home early. Vanessa was in the kitchen, slicing apples for Sonia's after-school snack. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the woman I married anymore. Not because she had aged or changed, but because she had chosen someone else. Over and over again. Every time she texted him. Every time she lied to me. Every time she handed a piece of herself to him and told herself it was love. She glanced up. You're home early. There was a call, I said. She went still. From who? From Michael's sister's husband. Her face drained of color. He found the letters, I added. You must have written some things you didn't want anyone else to see. Her lips parted, but no words came out. You knew he was married. I said. And you didn't care. She finally spoke, barely a whisper. It wasn't about him. It was about me. That infuriated me more than anything she'd said before. I stepped closer, careful not to raise my voice. Not for her sake, but for mine. You made it about you, I said. You wrote poetry about your longing while ignoring the debris you were scattering across two families. You lied to your husband. You betrayed your children. And now, the only person you're trying to protect is yourself. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't mean for it to go so far. But it did. And now there's no going back. She looked down, her shoulders trembling. I took a slow breath and let it out. I've decided what happens next. Her gaze snapped up. We're getting divorced, I said. Amicable if you cooperate. If not, every piece of evidence goes public. Your father already knows. The rest of your world can, too. She shook her head, eyes wide. What about the kids? We don't tell them why. Not yet. Not unless you force me to. I won't poison them against you. But I will fight for full custody if you make this ugly. Silence. Then she nodded. Not in agreement, but in defeat. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and silence. I moved into a furnished rental nearby while we sorted legalities. The kids stayed with her during the week and with me on weekends. We told them we were taking space, but tried to keep their routines intact. James asked once, "Are you and Mom mad at each other?" I lied. Told him no. Told him grown-ups just go through hard things sometimes. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Vanessa didn't contest the divorce. Maybe she was too tired to fight. Maybe she was ashamed. Or maybe, deep down, she knew there was no ground left to stand on. 3 months later, it was finalized. She got the house. I got the kids more than half the time. She didn't ask for alimony. I didn't offer it. The red binder stayed locked in a safe I no longer checked. It had done its job. Its pages were filled with wounds, but also with answers. Not the kind I wanted, but the kind I needed. The kind that made leaving possible. A year passed. I got promoted. Bought a small home of my own. James started soccer. Sonia learned to write her name in cursive and asked if she could start calling me Papa, like in the old movies. I said yes. Vanessa faded into something like distant family, someone I saw at handoffs and holiday parties, someone whose voice I could now hear without flinching. Then, one day, long after the storm had passed, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Unmistakably hers. I opened it slowly. I know I have no right to ask you anything. And I know I've done nothing to deserve your time. But if you're reading this, I hope it means you're willing to hear one last thing. You were a better man than I ever gave you credit for. And I don't mean faithful or steady or patient. I mean kind. I read the binder after you left it. Every page. I sat on our bed and cried like a stranger in my own life. I never imagined what it would feel like to see my thoughts, my betrayals, reflected back at me through your eyes. You didn't scream. You didn't punish me. You didn't expose me. You let me sit in my shame. That's something most people wouldn't do. You gave me the gift of accountability. I didn't deserve it, but you gave it anyway. I will carry that lesson until my last breath. I hope you find someone who knows how to love you in return. Not in hiding, not in halves. In the open. Fully. I hope she writes you letters too. Only this time, they'll have your name on the envelope. Vanessa _. I folded the letter slowly and slid it into the back of the binder. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't write her back. But I didn't throw it away either. Some things deserve to be kept, not because they're beautiful, but because they're proof you survived them. Now, years later, that drawer is still in the same desk. Unlocked. Empty. But not forgotten. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It carves a hollow place in you. And sometimes, the only way to fill it is to turn the key yourself.